Is Kyle Whittingham still the best coach in the Big 12? And what is his legacy? How can it change going into this season too? All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listening view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Today's episode, we are diving into all things Kyle Whittingham and Utah football, because I was able to sit down with the Athletic's Bruce Feldman at Big 12 Media Days to talk about Utah football as a program, how they're set up for the future, as well as Kyle Whittingham's legacy. But before we talk about Kyle's legacy, also, we are going to talk about the massive addition to the tight end room that Utah was able to land. Josiah Jefferson coming to Utah football this season. Originally thought it was going to be next. He's coming this year. And then talk about an interesting quote that Kyle Whittingham had, and a couple of interesting quotes that Utah players had at Big 12 at their first practice media availability last week. But first, is Kyle Whittingham still the best coach in the Big 12? I know this is Locked On Utes, but I'm actually going to say no. Not right now. To me, he's clearly the second best. I'll tell you why I think he's the best in the moment. I mean, look at what he's done, right? He has won 166 games and only 86 losses. But we're also talking about the current best head coach. And career accolades only get you so far. And career accolades are still a lot, especially when it's recent accolades, right? You look at what Kyle Whittingham did, 21 and 22 conference championships. That is way better than most of the coaches in the Big 12. Also, bowl eligibility year after year outside of last year, right? So to me, he's still right towards the top, right? Like him and Mike Gundy are the most career accomplished, but Gundy's actually never won a conference title. So to me, that puts Whit over Gundy. And then he's clearly still the best coach in Utah too, I think, right? And I like Kalani Sitake, but Sitake's 72 and 43 and without a conference title game appearance. So if you make it last year and you win it, maybe then you could enter this conversation, right? But to me, he's still up there over those guys. To me, you have to have won a conference championship recently in order to be better than a guy like Kyle Whittingham, who's won a couple of them and just had his program towards the forefront of the Pac-12 for the last decade, basically, and had a team that was capable of contending in the Big 12 last year, if not for quarterback injury, hence why they kept it close with every single game, right? But you do have to penalize Kyle for the last 2 years that have been a little bit underwhelming. Not too penalizing, because he still made the bowl game, one of them with an injured quarterback, but the fact that this team hasn't been competing for conference championships in the last week of the regular season, and the fact that last year was so disappointing, you don't make a bowl game, I do think it's fair to say Kyle's not the best coach in the Big 12 right now. Some of you will probably say I'm overreacting. I'd actually say Kenny Dillingham is. He went from worst to first last year, completely changed the culture of that program, an incredible offensive coach too, nearly beat Texas, also blew out Iowa State in the title game. He consistently found ways to win last season where Kyle Whittingham's team unfortunately wasn't able to do that. Are there multiple reasons that extend beyond that than head coach? Yes, but I think Kenny Dillingham is one of the best coaches in college football, plainly put, right now. I think he's easily top 10, maybe even top 5. I think it's incredible what he's been able to do down there with that Sun Devils program. I think he's going to be here to stay a long time. Could be a little early for me saying he's the best in the conference, but I really think what he does schematically, on top of how he just rebuilt and retooled that culture and built a conference contender and a team that was picked to finish worst to first, that's a feat in and of itself enough to lead me to say he is actually the best coach in this conference. I think Kyle Whittingham is the second best, beating out a load of other strong contenders. Speaking of strong contenders, Bruce Feldman, one of the best writers in college football of The Athletic, joined me at Big 12 Media Days to talk about Kyle Whittingham's legacy, because if Kyle can bounce back and win the Big 12 this year, he probably is going out on top as the best coach in the conference to me when you look at what he's done over the last few years. There's no question the train is a little bit off the rails just because of how the last few years have gone, but you can get it right back this season and be the best coach in the conference. But what will his legacy be? What's the short-term future look like for Utah football? That is the question that Bruce Feldman joined me to discuss. And we also talked about if Morgan Scalley is the guy who's going to help Utah football remain at the forefront and maybe even exceed some of the things they've done in college football. Please enjoy my interview with Bruce Feldman. Bruce Feldman of The Athletic, kind enough to join me here on Locked On Utes. What will Kyle Whittingham's legacy be? Feels like this could be his final year at Utah, one of the most respected coaches in the sport. It feels like 22 years now. What do you think his legacy will be?
Man, he was the guy who, obviously Urban had a great 2-year run, but Kyle's the one who put the foundation in where I felt like Utah became known for its identity of physical football. And that was the thing. You needed to see them in person to hear the pads popping, and great defensive football and really physical football. And that's the identity. And I think, whatever's going to be, obviously Morgan probably takes over, but I think that's the legacy of the program, was the physicality. And that's a testament to who he is.
How do you feel like coaches and maybe even just the media in general, what do you feel like the perception of Utah football is after a down year, a season to go, in which you don't make a bowl game?
I think a lot of it is just you had so much uncertainty with quarterback health for the last 2 years. I felt like 2 years ago we're in Pac-12 media days somewhere in Southern California, and, Cam Rising's there, and you're like, is he playing? Is he not? It was like that kind of hung over the program for the last 2 years. But I think what's different about Utah is they had so much sustained success under Kyle that it was like, oh, no one's ever like, oh, is the game passing by? Are they going to fire him? It was just like, how much longer does he want to coach? And it just like, I think people knew why they were not winning the way they normally do, because it was the injuries.
How big of a get do you feel like Jason Beck was for this offense for Utah?
Yeah, I think what he did last year, especially, you watch that, they were a fun team to watch. You got a dynamic quarterback. There's a really good scheme. They're going to be a problem for people because of how well they run the football, especially with the quarterback.
What do you make of the Utah-BYU rivalry with Jake Retzloff's recent departure? Utah going up there. They've lost to him 2 times in a row now. How do you feel like that game is going to play out this year?
Curious, because I think with Retzloff, I think they were a legit top 25 team. They won 11 last year. I think they were right there to compete for a playoff spot. He played really well, especially in the first half of the season, then got banged up in the second half. And I thought you had another year there. That's a blow to them, and they still have really good linebackers. They still have pretty good skill talent, but you're going to break in a new starter. A couple guys have experience. Obviously, Bear Bachmeier doesn't have the experience the other 2 guys. I'll be interested to see how they do, but it's a great rivalry, no doubt.
Is Utah positioned well after Kyle Whittingham's retirement, whether that just be Morgan Scalley being the right guy, and as well as just the NIL, the current world? How do you feel like the future of Utah football looks?
The NIL part is harder to predict, where it goes. But I think Morgan has shown he's a brilliant defensive coach, not just scheme-wise, but what, the expectations there. He's a really, really smart football guy. I've had a lot of conversations with him. A lot of the stuff he has said in terms of evaluations, I've thought back to like down the road. I'm like, oh yeah, he was spot on this. So I think, obviously there's Kyle's still there, and was his, I don't want to say his legacy is still being, written, but like, I think they're in good place to have the continuity. Kyle will, when he does step down, I think it's going to be like just seeing him today, and again, doing a bunch of their games as a sideline reporter, you see the physicality. Kyle is, he's real. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, what you're getting. So, but I think they'll be good. Like they have good athletic department, good, stable leadership around it. So I think it's a good, when it happens, I think it'll be about as smooth a transition as you could hope for.
How likely is it that Utah is a top 4 team in the Big 12 this year?
It's possible. Again, how much will be determined on how the offense goes, how the quarterback, it's different being in the Mountain West than it is in the Big 12. But, I think when you have OC and quarterback coming in, we know they're going to probably be good in the trenches. So it's possible, because that's where they were before, but this is a very competitive league and the margin between teams is not significant.
What's the most interesting thing, not Utah related, just in general? Like, what's the most interesting thing you've heard here at Big 12 Media Days this week?
I just think there's so much buzz about Texas Tech and how much money they are spending. Former offensive lineman turned billionaire has really poured a lot of money and put his money where his mouth is. And everyone, we've reported on it at The Athletic, and a lot of people are talking about it. And that's bigger than just Texas Tech. I think that's, it's bigger than the Big 12. I think people all around the country in the college football world are talking about what's going on in Lubbock.
We've heard so much about, house settlement, the new commissions they're putting together. Do you think we are going to see, Sonny Dykes earlier was calling for a level playing field? Do you think we're ever going to get that again? And in some ways, you can maybe say there never was a level playing field.
There never was a level playing field. There was, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia. They're not on a level playing field with anybody here. So I don't think that's realistic because it's never been realistic in college football.
For the Big 12, they want to get 2 teams in the college football playoff this year. Could you see that happening?
2? Yeah. Oh, I definitely think I could see it. 4, Brett Yormark's going to need to, win some arguments in that down the road. But I think for 2, yeah, I do think that's realistic.
Every year I look forward to your freaks list. Have you done it this year? Yeah. Have put it out?
It's okay. Coming in August.
Utah players on it?
We shall see.
I will just ask you then to close it out. I know you also just keep close ties on the draft and everything. How do you feel like teams are already looking at Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu, and is there another guy that you think will rise up for Utah in that ranks?
Lander Barton's a really good player. I mean, Fano could be a top 5 pick. You're talking about a guy who's, moves exceptionally well. He's just a big time prospect. So I again, you have a good track record. I talked to Kyle today about him, and he was like, Jordan Gross was a high pick. No reason to think Spencer couldn't be that.
That's the hope, is that Utah has a bunch of high picks and has a good year. We'll wait to see how it happens. So, Bruce, thank you so much for joining me. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money just felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building your wealth. Have you ever just looked at your spending and been like, wow, where did all my money go? That's what Monarch Money can help you cut down on. You can take control of your finance with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. It's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year when you use Monarch Money today. All righty. Massive thanks to Bruce Feldman for joining me on Locked On Utes. And it was great getting to talk with him. You know what else was great to see today? That Josiah Jefferson is going to be joining Utah football for this coming season. Some of you may be going, who is that? Well, he's a 3-star, 6'5", 230-pound tight end who played at Southwestern College and is now going to be coming to Utah. And you may say, okay, well, what about him? He's a 3-star tight end, like all that. Yeah, he was a number 1 JUCO tight end and the 4th-ranked JUCO player in the class of 26 because the thought was he'd be playing JUCO football for one more year and then join Utah. But no, he's joining Utah right now. Steve Bartle of KSL Sports reports that he's been added to the roster, and Utah football put that out there as well. He also said that this is comes to us from Steve Bartle. The expectation was he would join in January as a 26 signee. He had his AAA, but to sign now, he needed an NCAA waiver, which has always been a crapshoot. So this is a pleasant surprise. This is massive for Utah football to get. You're talking about a guy who produced at the collegiate level last season. Yes, it's JUCO to P4. So is he ready to make that jump? We're going to be interesting to see, but he's got some talent, right? Last year, 23 catches for 213 yards. And before you go, that's not very much. Look at other tight end numbers. So you'll see a lot of tight ends, like it's hard for them to crack the 300 and 400 yard. And you may also be thinking when you hear that, well, how is he going to do that at Utah then? It's not going to be easy, but he has the skill set to be able to do it. Also has NFL bloodlines. I mean, he's the brother of longtime NFL DB Tony Jefferson. Utah was also not the only guy interested in him. It's not like they found a diamond in the rough. They just straight up found a diamond. I mean, he chose Utah over Oklahoma and Arizona, which is massive. And Jefferson, to me, is a guy. He's going to bring size, speed, and athleticism. He adjusts to the ball well in the air when you turn on the tape. He can hold on to balls after contact, too. Does a good job absorbing those blows and still maintaining possession on the catch. Got good speed. Changes direction well. Can win versus man and zone coverage. Tough to tackle. Got some wiggle to his game. Good concentration. Sounds like the best tight end on Utah's roster when I lead all that, right? Well, I'm just telling you the things he does well, but he needs to do all those things well and consistently at the P4 level. That is what we're going to get to see in fall camp, how he compares and just competes with a wild Utah tight end room. Let me say that again. A wild Utah tight end room. I cannot believe the state of the Utah tight end room. It's not great, like if we're just being honest, but also they've changed things up, right? This offense doesn't matter as much. Fred Whittingham talked about that too, right? He said like, hey, they're going to be more H-back style. They're going to have all kinds of different guys coming in at tight end, and it's not going to be your traditional massive tight end. The only traditional tight end that Utah currently has that's going to be lining up at tight end is Dallin Bentley to me, a Snow College transfer. So when we look at this and go, okay, what does the Utah tight end room currently look like? Because Utah obviously used to be one of the premier destinations to be a collegiate tight end in college football. That's changed with this new Jason Beck offense, and the tight end room reflects that. You have such a hodgepodge of players and talents that it is just surprising. This is an offense that produced a first-round pick at tight end and one of the most productive tight ends collegiately that we'd seen over a few-year sample when Brant Keithy was at his best. So this is Utah's tight end room. Otto Tia, wide receiver at Utah State, who had over 500 yards that last year. But didn't it look great in the spring? So they're having him be a tight end to see if it can work better there. Hunter Andrews, who was a running back and linebacker last year, or linebacker coming to college, then played running back, and now they turned him into a tight end. So that kind of shows you how all over the board he's been. We already mentioned Dallin Bentley. He played tight end for Utah last year, but didn't really stand out a ton, made a couple of grabs, a couple of plays. He's probably the best blocker of the bunch here, but he just did not catch your eye on tape last year. I'll just say, or really stand out for this Utah team. So we'll see. And he's had an offseason. Maybe he's gotten better. JJ Buchanan, this is a guy that Fred Whittingham did say is at 225. So he's gained weight, but he hasn't lost speed and explosiveness. So he said he's a guy who has a great summer, but even Fred Whittingham said that he's looking at him more as a special teams guy, or he just said, look for him on special teams. But just to me, when you bring that up, and he's a true freshman already, learning the tight end position, yes, he's ran routes, but I don't see him being one of the guys as you, Buchanan. So you get and Buchanan was one of the top athletes that Utah landed in this most recent class. I think he could be a really special player, but I think it's going to be a little bit till we see him out there. Then we get Jefferson. And then, of course, Lander Martin decided to join this tight end room because why the heck not? So if that isn't the wildest tight end room, you fast forward to the year like Dalton Kincaid and Brant Keithy had, and I'm sure we were all thinking like Utah's going to have great tight ends forever. And now we look, and I'm not trying to shade those guys. It's just a fact that like these guys are not, none of these guys are proven collegiate tight ends. Last year on my show, a take I obviously wish I could have back, I said that Utah had the best tight end room in college football. It ended up being wrong. But honestly, looking back on it, it could have been come to fruition if they had better quarterback play. You have a Duke starting tight end now, Landon King. I still think Landon King can be really good, and Utah missed him a few times. It just made some mistakes, unfortunately, where they made some mistakes in not getting the ball. That it's just unfortunate that he wasn't able to have his potential maximized here, right? Then outside of King, who do you have? You have Caleb Lomu, Caleb Lohner, who ended up being drafted, but a monster physical freak for a tight end position with great vertical. You had Brant Keithy, who's an incredibly productive tight end, and Carson Ryan, who's now starter at BYU. So Utah had 3 starting tight ends in their room last year, and the other one was drafted to the NFL. That's an insane tight end room, and it is a very far cry different for this coming season. So when going, okay, who are going to be the guys in this tight end room? I will say right away, I hinted at it a little bit, but J.J. Buchanan is the guy right now I'm going to rank at the bottom of this list of most likely to be Utah's most productive tight end. Just being a true freshman. Yes, he was a productive receiver, but it's a weight transformation, learning Utah. It's hard for true freshmen to play, especially at a position like tight end. I'll say I don't know many true freshman tight ends that come in and do their thing. It's similar to offensive line, right? Where there's just a physicality that's expected from a blocking standpoint that usually you don't see guys play early on, right? So Buchanan, I think, sees the least amount of tight end snaps. This one might surprise some of you, but just based on this room and how late in the game they're getting up there, I actually, even though I was talking about all things Jefferson can do well, I'm actually going to rank him at that. I think we'll see him the 5th most amount among the tight ends, right? And there are other tight ends on this roster, I should say really quick, but I don't think that they're just going to see very much time. I think that we're going to see these are the guys that Utah's going to roll with, like Drew Clemens, Broderick Redden. They're both true freshmen. I'm not expecting to see much of them. Like Buchanan is clearly ahead of those guys to me. But back to this. So Jefferson, I just think it takes time. I don't think you can just jump in all of a sudden and be ready to roll. I think the reason, like, yes, he was supposed to have another year at JUCO anyways, but I also think the reason was like, hey, getting up to speed, development, all of that stuff so that you're ready to roll. I think he should use his red shirt this year. And then for the next 2 years, he could be a guy for Utah. I just think it takes time to learn this offense. I think it's just working on as well, being able to separate and do all the things you were doing at the community college level to get up to speed for what that playing speed is like at the P4. So I think that's part of it too. So I like I said, he's 5 for me right now. 4th most snaps, I'll go Lander Barton as we sit here. Maybe Lander will play a little bit more than that. I think we'll see Lander some, but I don't think it's going to be a ton because I think Dallin Bentley is Utah's best blocking tight end. So I actually think from a snap perspective, we may see the most of him. Or actually, I'll go second most for him. Then Hunter Andrews, because I just don't know how much Utah will use a traditional tight end, but we've heard Andrews did turn a lot of heads. The top three, honestly, are pretty interchangeable for me. And then I do think Otto Tia sees the most snaps because we've heard that this tight end is like a bigger wide receiver. Well, have the wide receiver who had 500 yards collegiately last season. Yes, a group of 5, but he's going against linebackers. Like that's a mismatch. So I do expect Tia to see the field a lot for Utah. So I'll go Tia sees the field the most, then Bentley from a blocking perspective when Utah wants to utilize a tight end to block, and then Hunter Andrews gets in a fair amount too. I think those will be the main 3 tight ends. Then we'll see some Lander Barton. I think Jefferson and Buchanan end up redshirting, with Buchanan maybe contributing more on special teams. But yeah, for me, that's how the tight end room is going to shake out. I am curious to see what it does end up looking like in the end, though. Make sure you guys drop your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think the Utah tight end room is going to look like in 2025? But what is Utah's offense going to look like in 2025? Well, coaches last week and players offered some insights into some strong developments that we've seen over the course of the summer, as well as this early into fall camp. What are those developments? I'm going to tell you in one moment. Today's show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy gain. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need the extra boost to stay sharp and energized. I played 9 holes last week, and as I was getting ready for the next 9, I was like, I am not ready for this. That's where 5 Hour Energy helped me get through the grind of golf, the fun grind, but it can be a grind playing 18 in this heat. So golf is about just having good time with people and good flavors, of course. The grape, ginger, lime flavors are the best part of the club of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive $20 off your first order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Head over and get 5 Hour Energy today. Very interesting quote last week during week 1 of fall camp and availability as well for the players and coaches. Kyle Whittingham dropped a very, 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 very interesting quote. Dampier is as good a leader as any QB we've had, and he has the it factor at QB. Those are both massive praises from someone like Kyle Whittingham, who only gives out praises so much. He said he said last year that a couple years ago that Cam Ryan was the best leader he's ever been around. And the fact that Dampier, even if he would say Rising is one, the fact that he would be even willing to say one of the best leaders we've had, I think is a massive praise and compliment to Dampier and shows you what a strong leader and just talent he is too, right? I mean, the fact that Witt is saying he has the it factor at QB, watch him at New Mexico last year. Any of you guys just waiting for Utah football to roll around, watch some New Mexico offense last year, and you'll see he does indeed have that it factor. So I totally agree with Kyle Whittingham, and I just think it's cool that Devon Dampier is obviously not just doing well, but doing really well in practice. The fact that Whittingham is willing to share and sing some of his praises about. Not only is he just an amazing leader, which is obviously something that doesn't just happen on the field, but throughout the summer there too. He's talked about the rosters just kind of just the guys have been, gravitated towards him too, which is just massive. So he's got the it factor on the field and has the leadership qualities off it, which are huge for Utah. Devon Dampier also talked about that Larry Simmons and Tobias Merriweather when he was asked about, hey, how are those guys going to catch up? Because that is a big thing. We talked about as soon as Merriweather and Simmons came in, right? Last year, Damian Alford, it's almost painful to bring it up because of just how, unfortunately, bad it went for both parties. Alford averaged 19 yards per catch at Syracuse, over 600 yards, and came to Utah and only ever attempted a pass. So it's a little scary when you're talking about spring portal transfer receivers, right? Well, thankfully, not as much when you're talking about these guys because Larry Simmons and Tobias Merriweather, and I don't know exactly what Alford was doing last year. Maybe he was up at the camp with this team, but it does sound like Simmons and Merriweather are doing everything in their power to be ready to go. These are guys that Dampier said anytime they got out to throw in the summer, those guys were there and up there. Yes, they were with the strength and conditioning program all offseason, obviously, or all summer offseason. Both Simmons and Merriweather were, but the fact that they were getting in those extra reps on the field and building that chemistry is massive. And that's something that Utah's wide receiver coach, Mike Simon, said. It's about, for those two guys, how quickly they can grasp the offense and get, just the chemistry with Dampier. He said they've already been working to get extra reps. He had a story where he said he went to the facility late on Saturday and he saw those guys out there throwing and practicing their craft. And I think that's awesome that these guys are locked in and just doing everything they can to try and propel Utah football back to the forefront of the Big 12, something I think this team has a great chance to do. Also really like that Caleb Lomu, when asked about like, hey, what did preseason accolades mean to you? He said, nothing. He said, they don't mean anything. He said, it's a cool honor and I appreciate it, but I know it's preseason and preseason doesn't stand for anything. So I love that he has the right mindset about that. Wayshawn Parker was asked about, his goals and some of the things he talked about. And he talked about wanting to have 1,000 yards. He said one of the reasons, which I actually didn't know this, was he was from the same high school as Devontae Booker. Obviously one of the best backs in recent memory for Utah football. And he had 1,000 yards. So Wayshawn's like, I want to do that too. And Kyle even said, that's a realistic goal when asked about it later, because he said, hey, we have this. We said, we think our offensive line's really good. I'm telling it's funny. He was even like, I'm telling them they're really good too. So that was funny, but yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a realistic goal. I think Wayshawn Parker is going to be this team's bell cow back. I think that we talked about last week how he separated himself. I think Naquari Rogers is going to be the number 2 back for this Utah team and still factor in, but Parker's going to get the lion's share of the carries. And I think he's going to have one heck of a season. I actually think he's got a really good chance. And as we sit here right now, I will say, yes, he goes for 1,000 yards. He crushes his goal in his first year with Utah football, repairing with his running back coach, Mark Octuaya, as well. So really excited to see what we're going to be getting out of this running back room, Parker being the guy who leads them, chief among them. And I just can't wait to get this Utah football season underway. I think it's going to be a special one. The more I dive into this team, the more I read and just study up and try to do everything I can to provide the best coverage for you guys about this team, the more I just believe that this team is destined to be incredibly strong in the 2025 season. So what do you guys think about Utah football this fall? Do you think they're in for a major bounce back? What do you think of the quotes and comments that we've heard so far? Is there one that's really stood out to you? And what do you think we still need to learn about this Utah football team? Let me know in the comments below. As always, if you're in the market for a second listen, because we greatly appreciate you making Locked On Utes your first listen of the day, make sure you check out the Locked On College Football Podcast. Spencer McLaughlin has you covered on the greatest sport in the country. That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you tomorrow as we continue to cover Utah in the midst of fall camp.